I recently had a chance to watch the film The Road, based on the novel by Cormac McCarthy. And to say that this film is a masterwork is an understatement. This is probably the most powerful film I have ever seen. And it has so many different messages that operate on so many different levels. It has archetypal snapshots from things that have happened throughout human history. And it really is a story about the good guys versus the bad guys, and how tyranny and barbarism is the great enemy of civilization and humanity, and how love is such a wonderful virtue, and that it isn't until times of great adversity that we see the worst and the best in humankind being expressed. And it made me think of a Victor Hugo quote from the French philosopher: "Adversity makes men, and prosperity makes monsters." And another quote by John Quincy Adams: "Courage and perseverance have a magical talisman before which difficulties disappear and obstacles vanish into air." Being a student of history, this dystopic near-future film was very unsettling. I don't have nightmares about Big Brother coming to get me. I don't have nightmares about my children dying in car wrecks. I don't really have nightmares. And I've been having very disquieted dreams. I wouldn't even call them nightmares since watching this film, because I have studied Leningrad and the close to 1 million people that died in that siege, and the years of cannibalism that sustained the population under the Nazi onslaught. I have studied what happened, of course, in Rome and during the different phases of its collapse. I've looked at Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the hundreds of thousands killed by the A-bombs at the end of World War II. And this film has a pro-Second Amendment message. I mean, if you don't have a gun during this collapse, you're in deep trouble. I've seen that Hollywood meme of victim disarmament being pushed over and over again, where you always see these horror movies and things where nobody's got guns to fight back against the killer, which is just asinine. It never, really telegraphs that message of how important the gun is and how it can be used in the hands of bad people for oppression or in the hands of the good guys to protect themselves and their family. But the overall message in this film is intense love and commitment, and the love that a parent can only have for their children, and really a growing experience that you have that's built into us in our very genetic code, that once you have children, you really grow up, or at least you should grow up to another level of understanding that it's your children's future that matters and their protection that matters. And when you understand that loving others through your children is important, it teaches you the larger truth of life, that we all are interconnected as a society, as a species, and that if you love your children today, don't you love your unborn great-great-great-grandchildren just as much if you could hold them in your arms? Why then would you go along with illegal wars of aggression like Iraq and Afghanistan? Why would we accept the new good guys on shows like 24 torturing people's children in front of their parents to get answers? Why are we basically being dehumanized by design? And the modern system that we're all living under right now is a form of creeping death, where the social engineers literally traffic in our psyches and our souls. And people have lost their empathy and their humanity, and they've been made so envious and jealous and so self-centered that they lose the greater sense of community. And we are literally submersed in toxins and additives and GMO, all of which on record have been designed to reduce our fertility and to cause increases in cancers. And the entire world population is fascinated now with catastrophe and collapse films, because at a subconscious level, the subconscious mind is much more powerful than the conscious mind, and the human computer knows that humanity is in a crisis on so many levels. But we can't recognize it because it's not a truck coming over a hill, with 15 cannibals in the back that are planning to butcher you and your son. It is a scientific corporate board that analyzes future trends and that tracks everything we're doing, to where they can not just predict the future in mass movement or individual movement now with Google NSA type software, but they can also guide the future and create false trends through the Madison Avenue PR machine. And so we're losing our human destiny. We're losing our connection to the land. We're losing everything that makes us human. I mean, it is a horrific thing to have all these government textbooks and documents that we cover on the show where they admit they're poisoning the water, they're poisoning the food, sperm counts are down by over 80% in the Western world, to know that HIV was a genetically engineered bioweapon, to know that they are purposefully adding mercury to the corn syrup, to know that they're feeding GMO crops to animals that is causing them to become sterile, and it's passing on these chemical toxins to humans, to know that the BT corn that grows its own natural pesticide is wiping out the bees, and then in all the studies it's causing massive organ failure in lab rats. Folks, that is even much more horrific than this nightmare dystopic film that has perfectly presented one spectrum of human collapse. And it also has some global warming propaganda in it about the atmosphere collapsing. But what's strange is NASA just put out a report this week saying that they've seen the greatest atmospheric collapse in the last 100 years of recorded history in 2008 and 2009. But NASA was actually honest and said it's because the sun became semi-dormant and was not putting off any Coriolis solar flares. And so that the Earth itself has actually cooled in the last decade. It was heating up, and that cooling trend and that ionizing radiation that forms cloud nuclei has not been there in the last decade, and so the atmosphere began collapsing. Thank God the sun just flared back up. We now know that giant asteroids hit the Earth conservatively every few 100,000 years, and it's the same with megavolcanoes, like the one in Yellowstone. We know it's not happening every 10 or 15 million years like scientists previously thought. We know that the sun is not stable, that it cools off and heats up. We know that we are living on a tiny little blue-green jewel floating through space way out in the boondocks. And then when you read the globalist plans, where they openly want to destroy the family and basically mechanize humanity and turn us into basically biological androids, you realize that the threat in the short term isn't asteroids, it's not global warming, but that it is the elite with their open-air genetic engineering. I mean, I just saw last week a major university study with this new salmon they've approved that within controlled conditions they did test, and that the genetically engineered chimera, it's a cross species, it's only part fish, extincted the other salmon within 40 generations, and that's 40 generations in the open sea. We know that they've, for over a decade, have part spider, part goat chimera creatures, genetic mutations that create body armor in their milk. We know that the major GMO companies aren't just coming out with 8 major food crops, but hundreds and hundreds, and that they are literally rewriting the genetic code of the planet, and they don't even care if it has dangerous implications. The real threat is this scientific elite that has literally walled off humanity in a kind of arrested development. And they write about this, and the establishment in articles written by Bill Joy and others have openly discussed the fact of, do the elites even need humanity? Or are we garbage that has to be taken out? And you read the official United Nations plans to reduce the world population by at least 80%, and you realize that this entire world government, in their own words, is being built as a kill grid. And what's crazy is it's so horrific, even though it's publicly available information, the average person can't face it. Once you've seen The Road, you'll understand what I'm about to say. But it totally resonated. We all know Veritas. We know truth because it's something that was already in us. And we see it as self-evident when another fellow human being has experienced and thought the same thoughts you're having, but just from a different perspective. And that these men and women could come together and make this film, that this author could write this book and could put out such Veritas. It is just a work of extreme beauty and touched my soul at the deepest places. Even though it's ugly, through that ugliness, it lets you understand how important goodness is, and love, and honor, and family, and self-defense. Are you with the good guys, or are you with the bad guys? And do you carry that fire inside you that even as we're becoming nihilistic and more evil, and even as people look around them and say, everybody else is evil, I'm going to be evil, It's saying, no, I'm going to carry the fire in myself. I'm going to be good. I'm going to try to be pure. I'm going to try to be loving. I'm going to try to be honorable. It doesn't mean any of us are perfect, but you're striving. You're carrying that fire inside of you. And so I salute the filmmakers, and I salute everybody else who sees this film and is touched by it, because this is truly the greatest masterwork in filmmaking that I have ever seen.